So for those of you in this class who may at some point in your life grow interest into figuring out if you have a soul or a spirit, these are the stages you have to go through, and these are the stages that all heroes have to go through. Any other questions before we move on? Okay.
Such and such. What does that mean?
To be blessed?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen movies. You know, some movies make you laugh, especially if you're like in theaters with your friends and eating popcorn and chips and all that. But there are some movies you watch, or there's some music you listen to, but when it ends, you just feel very calm. I'll give you this scenario. I remember my father doesn't speak English too well, despite being here for about 50 years. So when the movie Malcolm X first came out with Denzel Washington, they all sat together and watched the movie. And my brother had the responsibility of translating for my father. And near the end of the movie, and my father's a political junkie. It's because Iran is always in social and political upheaval. And so when Malcolm was shot, all of a sudden my father started to cry. And it was a puzzling thing, you know. He's not African American, he's not even American. Why would he cry? And he's a grown man in front of his kids and his wife, something that usually people don't do, especially in my culture. All the masks that we usually have to wear in life to protect ourselves, to be functional, you know. I mean, if you've been socialized well, just to even be in this class, you have to wear relatively good masks. If you're bored, wear a mask that makes you pretend that you're not bored. If you're stupid, wear a mask that when you ask a question, you actually sound intelligent. I don't know if those things are possible, nevertheless. So at this moment, my father has no longer any masks to wear. They have been stolen from him by this last scene. And then he says, why are human beings so cruel? And then we sit and engage in conversation, and the tears go away, and it just becomes a casual political conversation for political junkies. But for that few seconds, it didn't happen to me, it didn't happen to my mom, it didn't happen to all the other people in the living room, it just happened to my father. Why is it that at times something touches you? Who the hell knows? Why the hell do you come here, man? You're not even enrolled in this class. What? You're here to what? Listen and go home and make a gossip of it? Tell your friends, yeah, you know, he's interesting, but he's stupid. But let's just say that's not the case. That you came here the first night and some parts of the conversation inspired you. And you go home and you think, well, you made plans to go to Florida. What the hell happened to the inspiration? It went away. That's what happens. Inspiration comes. You don't know where it comes from. It's like magic. It's like, how do you create a Lionel Messi? How do you create a Muhammad Ali? How do you create a Tiger Woods? How do you create a Cristiano Ronaldo? How do you create a Magnus Carlsen? We don't know. They just happen to us. Humanity is blessed to see its own genius And you can't like read a book to become them. But this is such an egocentric environment where everybody wants to be like the next Steve Jobs. Read a couple of books on chess and eventually you'll be number one. Recognize the genius, worship the genius, and be content. But again, going back to your question about inspiration or being blessed, that's what it is. You are blessed to become blind to everything that you've accumulated in your life, intellectually, physically, emotionally. You become a blank slate, and all you do is just go home with a sense of awe and wonder. But the problem is, when they're not protected, you lose them. And they just stay inside you as a memory. You came here because of the memory. That yes, I came here last week. Of the hour, I was inspired for 10 seconds. That's motivating enough for me to go back to the classroom. You come back the second time, I was okay, it was a little scattered, but nevertheless, it's just a memory. It's not like a living thing inside you, and that's what mourning is. You grieve because you're still in pain. You can't forget. You want to, but it just doesn't leave you. I'm sorry?
I'm wondering what Matthew's motive was.
Who cares?
Was he like trying to be a scribe, or was he saying like
Doesn't
blessed,
matter.
as in like good on you?
Doesn't matter. There are stories that Carlos Castaneda, he actually never met Don Juan. There was really no Don Juan. He just made the whole thing up. Who cares? Harry Potter doesn't exist. But when you watch the movies, man, they inspire you. There are parts that inspire you. You feel sad when Dumbledore dies, when he's killed by the closest person to him. Whether Matthew was real or not, whether he wrote the book, who cares what the intentions are? If you're able to look at literature, very much if you're able to look at a loss in the proper perspective, they can inspire you. You're a meaning-making machine. You want to look at the Gospel of Matthew like a scholar? You can. And you just come to this class and you say, yes, it was written probably about 40 to 60 years after Christ. It's usually called the Jewish Gospel. It has a genealogy that the Gospel of Mark doesn't have. The genealogy goes to Abraham. But Matthew had to be very, very clever, because after having read the Old Testament, he realized every 14 generation there is a Messiah. So he made sure that his genealogy is every 14 generation. But when you read the last few generations before Jesus comes about, it comes to the number 13, not 14. But you see, the audience are too stupid. I mean, you can do all that stuff. And yes, people here, those who are Christian will say, nah. Those who are not Christian say, yes, I knew Bible was fake. What have you accomplished? Nothing. You know, it took us a long time to create alphabets. It took us even longer to create words. And they only have one function. Before I tell you the function of language to some extent, let me tell you a few things about coffee. There was a guy in Saudi Arabia around the 9th or 10th century. He became curious about the African culture, certain parts of it. So he journeys to Africa. There he comes to realize that these people are drinking a liquid that's black. I'll drink it. And he liked the taste. He also gave me some energy. He went back to his country and Arabia, and he fell sick. All of a sudden he remembered that this liquid has healing powers as well. He had one of his friends go to this part of Africa, grab some beans, put them in water in a jug, let it sit, and then he drank. Not only did his sickness go away, but he wasn't able to sleep. He said, well, that's great. Saudi Arabia is a Muslim country. We enjoy worshiping and praying from 10 p.m. all the way to 6, but human body gets exhausted. Let's do this. Now that I know the magical powers of coffee, why not introduce them to the dervishes, to some of the Muslims who enjoy worshiping and praying and all that? And he does. And so it becomes a drink for the mystics. Then some king from England, and that drink goes to Iran. And for the first time, Iran repeats coffee. It's called Qahwa Khane, the house of coffee. Then someone from England goes to Arabia, takes a sip, says, oh, it's really good. Takes it to England, and then you have Starbucks. And what do people do? They order coffee, they sit, and they talk about ridiculous things. And the point I'm trying to make is language very much like coffee. It was made or created or seen as something magical. And eventually it just becomes duck soup. It loses its power. It's looked upon very casually. And there are reasons as to why you asked this particular question. Did Matthew have intentions about this, or was his intentions about that? It's part of a culture that has become profoundly secular. And when your culture becomes secular, you will have secular emotions. You will have secular thoughts. Your brain works like a microscope. You put the New Testament, and that's what happened. I mean, that's what the Frankfurt School, was about. A lot of things happened that allowed the West to put both the Old and the New Testament under a microscope and come to realize that some of the stuff doesn't make any sense. For the first time, they looked at the Gospel of Luke, and right there in the first chapter, he says, this is not an eyewitness account. What? You're telling me you were never there? And yet you're telling me how Jesus was and what he said and where he went? How's that possible? It's more like a gossip than a gospel. But when you do that, you lose the magic. And it's good to have both the magic and the understanding. Anyone else? Before we... No one? Go ahead.
Self-hatred.
Sorry?
Self-hatred.
Well, it depends what exactly you're hating about yourself. Again, go back to the prodigal son story, because that is a beautiful description of the human condition. We make mistakes. That's who and what we are. And you can't hate yourself from having made mistakes. I think the next issue is, well, what kind of a mistake? How intense, how bad is the mistake? At what stage are you making this mistake? If you're 20 and you have a boyfriend or you have a girlfriend and you do something, let's just say, you look at another guy or another gal and they leave you. Well, okay, you'll be sad for a few days and then you'll recover. You're young. Your recovery period is relatively quick. If you're 95 and your wife has gone to Safeway and you see a 100-year-old woman walking and you find yourself very attracted to her, and you look at her and say, come to the car, and she says, I can't really hear you. You say, well, come to the car, and you grab her and you take her to the back seat and you guys go, idiot. And you go back and forth, up and down. So what happens? Well, she comes back, she sees you with another human being. At the age of 90, how are you going to recover? Who's going to take you to Kaiser? If your self-hatred has to do with what we talked about in the Beatitudes. You went to school, you did get married, you did have children, you took care of your parents, and you've come at a place where you look at, examine your life, kind of like Socrates. And an unexamined life is not worth living. But you examine your life and you realize your life didn't really amount to much. Despite having everything, it doesn't amount to much. Now you have the self-hatred. And your self-hatred has to do with wasted energy, wasted time, wasted youth, not having the proper people around you to guide you. But the truth is, who the hell do you want to guide you? You certainly don't want someone like Jesus Christ to tell you how to live your life, because his demands are going to be very, very, very great. And you don't have the money to pay. There are too many things you have to sacrifice to be, around him. So you want someone like Laney College instructor. And what are my demands? Watch a couple of videos and write a stupid essay. You can do that. If you've never done math, your desire is to take a calculus class, that's just stupid. So, if your self-hatred has to do with having gone through life and coming to realize that this is not panning out the way you imagined, then your self-hatred is good. But the hatred needs to be guided. Because if hatred becomes chronic, it turns into anger and then depression, because you would want to fix it, but you can't. Once you get chronically depressed, you're finished. Your machine, your organism is just so badly damaged at that point, no one can help you. Unless you're blessed. Something magically happens and you kind of get yourself out. But self-hatred is good, but you need to understand that you have the physical self. You can hate yourself for having had too many eclairs. Now you have diarrhea. And you have to miss your date, classes, whatever the case may be. You can have a great physical life, come to realize emotionally there's just something wrong with you. That you made some bad mistakes. Now emotionally you're just sad and depressed. And you say, I wish I didn't make those mistakes. That's another self-hatred. The point is, all these emotions that we have on the inside are good as long as you know how to use them. And to use them, you need tools. If you don't have tools, they're going to drown you. It's the same thing. Self-hatred is a moment of inspiration. That you are like the prodigal son. You wasted a lot of things. And self-hatred also leads to shame. Nothing wrong with just looking yourself in the mirror and say, you suck. And then asking for help. You need to be able to ask for help. No one's going to come help you. I'm not going to call you, Kendra, either to come to my house or come to my office. That's not my job. If you think someone out there can help you, inspire you, if you feel at home, it's your duty. And if your pride is in the way, fine, just wait. The point is, no one gives a shit about any of us. Anyone else? Yeah, hold on. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you could talk a little bit more about the human condition. Like, what is it exactly? Is it like an idea? Is it something that we all go through?
No, simply put, that life is just very frustrating. At every stage, you have to do new things. And at every stage, you're dealing with a good amount of unknown components. And all of us are in the dark. I assume you've had a few relationships. Maybe one. Don't look at her. Talking to her, it's not your business. Okay? So, how did it start? Well, you like the guy, or the gal, or it, these days, right? And then what happened? Well, fantasies began. You thought you knew. You went in with your emotions, but not your head. Then you realize there are problems. Then you use your head for the wrong things. Let me figure out why I feel this way. Then it just went bad. And that's what life is. At every corner there is something waiting for you to demolish everything you've created. I mean, the story of Job is very much like that. That you have no idea what life is going to deliver the next moment. And like Job, you will suffer. Like Job, you will hate. Like Job, you'll be angry. Like Job, you will not be open to advice. Like Job, you will curse God. You may even have suicidal thoughts. That's the human condition. The Buddha doesn't have a happy philosophy of life. Life is suffering. Jesus doesn't have a happy philosophy of life. Do not store your treasures down. It's a den of thieves. Time will take it. Other people will take it. Your memory will take it. There are no happy philosophies of life unless you come to America. Good luck. Yeah.
What do you think Matthew meant by meek?
I'm guessing it's just another way of maybe phrasing humility, where you slap someone, instinctually you want to slap them back, but you have the ability now to put yourself in the other person's shoes. It's kind of like having a father who's a drunk, and he's been a drunk all of his life, and you've hated him. And you've hated him from the age 2 all the way to the age 42. Okay? And then you're inspired at a certain moment. Maybe you've watched a movie, maybe you listened to music, maybe you've gone around the lake. You have this calm moment of peace. And then you review your own life, and you realize how devastatingly frustrating and hard it has been. Figuring out what you want to do with your life, what sort of a person you want to be with, difficulty paying a mortgage, a car payment, just having friends, and you say, oh my God, did my father go through all of this? And then you say, yeah, I remember smoking too. I remember drinking too. I played music and I screamed, not because I love music, I just love the screaming. And for the first time you're able to put yourself in your father's shoes. And you say, it wasn't his fault after all, maybe. I mean, all the stuff really are just advanced teachings for a kind of animal that's not ready for any of it. Anyone else? Yeah.
I asked this question, I think, the first week class about the hero's journey video. You say all of us are tragedies with messiahs, and a dream by itself is not sufficient. We need a trinity. So I was wondering if you could talk about the Holy Trinity.
So you have the Father, at least in the movie, his name is Morpheus. Morpheus creates dreams. Morpheus also has Nebuchadnezzar. Morpheus has a training ground. Morpheus knows what the Matrix is. Morpheus also knows what Nebuchadnezzar is. Nebuchadnezzar is a Babylonian king in the Old Testament whose mission was to go and destroy the Jewish temple because it had become a den of thieves. He wanted to make sure that the people go back worshiping the right God, the proper God, not the sort of images that they themselves have created. And that's what Morpheus does. He wants to destroy the dreams that you have for yourself in this world. But you're not a social animal. You're not a political animal. You belong to God. But you need to be free. And that's the combat training. Don't think that you are. Know that you are. Now, so you need a father. You need someone who knows both worlds. Now, Trinity is about air. It's about the breath. It's about the spirit. You're talking about the Father having this what we call breath within him. It's in the Sufi tradition. which we'll talk about tonight. The breath, very much like the Old Testament in Genesis, very much like in many of the traditions, the breath is of immense importance. Trinity belongs to Morpheus. It's the breath of a teacher that enters the Son, i.e. Neo. If that doesn't make sense, let me give it to you this way. Imagine you're heterosexual. Imagine you're single, and you desire to be single. You go out somewhere, and all of a sudden, someone is attractive enough to inspire you. You're blessed with a moment of inspiration, even though you had promised yourself, never again get involved with anyone. Well, you're seeing the physical body, but there is something invisible now that's flowing through you. That's the air. That's the breath. That's the Spirit of God. That's the Spirit of inspiration. But it flows through you. So it is, since within the context of this particular class, what you need is a teacher who knows or who has access to, not fully, no teacher has access to both worlds fully, but they need to know more than you do. Now, the presence of that particular person also generates what they call breath, spirit, that infects you, contaminates you, impacts the way your body is, your body language begins to change, it begins to kind of change the way you feel about yourself, you feel about life, you feel about the space. And once the breath changes, your emotions, your thoughts begin to change as well. That's what it is, as far as my understanding goes. So you have God, you have a physical man named Jesus, and then he breathes what lives inside him into Jesus. And then Jesus breathes what lives inside him to the masses. So when he says, I and the Father are one and the same, it's actually true. But without Jesus, there is no air, there is no breath, there is no spirit. What you have is simply a set of assumptions about yourself. That's it. And remember, human beings are profoundly self-deceptive and cunning. We will assume all sorts of things about ourselves. Anyone else? Yeah? What do you mean? Good job. Good. Kendra? Yeah.
Is that like an explanation for like what the Trinity is in like Christian tradition, or like your perception of it? Where is that answer from?
I don't really know, I'm just winging it. I think Father, is the foundation. It is something stable. It's like your father. Just your mom stays home, the father goes out, gets contaminated, still is committed and loyal to the family. Very strong, very powerful, inwardly, outwardly. That's what the father is. Someone who knows, and someone who is patient and willing to sacrifice. The son is the human body. And ultimately all fathers desire their kids to be like them. In the sense that to be strong, to be loyal, to be committed. In Buddhism, what you have is, you have the Buddha, you have the Dharma, and then you have the Sangha. You have the teachings. Go by yourself, Dhammapada, and read. Fine. What you're missing is the community. The breath of all your brothers sitting and reading Dhammapada. The energy that lives in that space. You don't have that. And though some moments you may feel inspired by some of the passages, those moments will disappear. They will fade. They will simply become some intellectual data you can spit out once in a while. And then you have the person who is the founder of this. He has the knowledge, he has the community, and he has the spirit all living inside him. and he transfers it out. It's the same thing. All these traditions have the same thing in common. You know, in Islam, what you have is I forget, but I'll come to it in a minute. Anyone else? Yeah.
Why do you think people convert religions if they all...
Because they're stupid. Mahatma Gandhi was once approached by some kid from the West, American. He said, "Oh, Mahatma Gandhi, I love you." And Gandhi says, "You know, I'm not gay." He says, "No, I know. I'm just making things up. Just sort of lighten the mood in this class." He says, "Well, you know, you're so compassionate and so forgiving, like a sacrificial lamb. What is your religion so I can convert to yours?" And Gandhi looks at this kid and says, "Well, what's your religion?" "Well, you know, I was born a Christian." He says, "Okay, well, you know, just follow the teachings of Christ and you'll get to where I am." And I think look, Christianity is your software. That's what America is. That's your software. Remove the glitches or the viruses from the software, and you can be a Christian as well as a Taoist, as well as a Buddhist. You don't need to convert. Buddhism came from India. That's not your culture. That's not your temperament. In India, people have open door policy. We don't have open door policy here. You have to keep your doors locked, and you need to carry guns. That's the American culture. You don't invite people to break bread with them. There is no reason to convert to anything. Where you are is the best place to start. The Gospels are really, really, really good. If you live in this culture, this is your parents' religion, you don't need to, go to a place that's foreign to you. Yeah, that's it. Anyone else? Yeah.
What if your parents disregarded Christianity?
It's still inside you.
It's still inside
Yeah.
you. They saw the viruses, like that's all they saw.
Look, abortion it comes from Deuteronomy and many other places. Frowning on homosexuality comes from the Old Testament. Most of the laws about bankruptcy comes from the Old Testament. Marriage comes from the Old Testament and the New Testament. A good amount of things that we do on a daily basis are rooted in religion. Not Buddhism, not Hinduism, Christianity. Whenever someone speaks about God, you don't think about Atman or Brahman. You think about Jesus Christ or Yahweh. That's, the software that exists in this place. You don't need to become a pagan, that exists in Rome some 4,000 years ago. You're not a Roman. That's a different culture for a different time, for a different group of people. It doesn't belong to you. But if on the other hand you've come to realize that perhaps paganism is something that works for you, if you can approach it, in a healthy way, without perhaps you being aware of it, you become a really good Christian.
Well, isn't some of Christianity pulled from?
Sure.
I mean, like when you learn it, you can kind of
Yeah.
pick and choose what is helping you.
Yeah, it depends really on how you wish to approach religion. Everything begins with a sense of curiosity. If your curiosity is not snatched by your intellect, I just want to collect data, If you approach paganism with a sense of thirst and hunger and yearning, that's fine, it's good. I think this day and age, because of all the poison that lives in us and society, whatever, gives you a sense of belonging and meaning and purpose, it's good. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Short thought. Judaism and paradise lost.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So let's move into Islam real quick, and then we'll go home. So you have a kid, some 1,500 years ago. His father is dead. His mother is dead. 2 years later, he is raised by his grandfather, and he lives in a very tightly knit Bedouin community. Imagine this class. All of us are friends. All of us are relatives and family members. And we have a certain tradition in place. Now, without the support of your clan, you will not survive. To live in any community, you have to be guided by its traditions. You are not an individual. Individuality does not exist. It's a community, communion, communism, everything is shared. Okay. Now, just in case you do something that your community doesn't like, they will push you out. You will be expelled. In New Guinea, for example, if you're a 70-year-old man and all of a sudden you become angry and you express that anger outwardly, they will kick you out. They will give you a timeout. You're 70. You have to go stand in a corner. Okay? Now, because Arabia has an ancient tradition, it has a long history, and whenever you live in any environment that has history, you need to understand, in that space, history happens, events happen, and those events are interpreted, and those interpretations become part of the historical psyche of its occupants. Okay? So if you want to know, for example, what it means to be America, the events that took place in America. Okay. How are those events interpreted, experienced? Life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. This is your life. No one can tell you what to do. It is your life. You have the right to pursue what seems to be happiness for you. You owe no one anything except yourself. You don't belong to a community. Every person here lives on an island all by themselves. Now, at a very, very young age, what you have, and there are lots of fantastic stories about this particular fellow, Muhammad. If Jesus was born of a virgin, if the Buddha was born of a virgin, if Zarathustra was born of a virgin, if Mahavira was born of a virgin, Muhammad wasn't born of a virgin, but at the age of 4, supposedly, he was blessed. Angels come down, open his chest, wash his heart, sew his chest back together, and leave. All heroes need to have fantastic stories, without exception. If you have parents and they are 60 or 70, ask them how their life has been, and they will tell you if they are in that space where they can sit back, spend 2-3 hours telling you their heroic journey in life. Or your grandparents, perhaps. to have seen World War I, maybe, definitely World War II, lived through depression, poverty, how difficult it is to be married, how difficult it is to raise kids, how everything is so expensive, now being in the cradle of old age. And yet every time you see them, they put on a happy face for you. Were they sad, depressed? Yes. Did they see therapy? No. Did they tough it out? Absolutely. And the point I'm trying to make, all heroes have fantastic stories, and Muhammad is no exception. Okay. But again, remember, you don't need to go to the giants of humanity to find magic. Your grandparents are sufficient. And if your grandparents are dead, motherhood. It's an amazing journey. How a woman, despite having desires of her own, is willing to put herself on the cross, sacrifice all of her passions for her children. At least that's how it used to be. At a certain point in Muhammad's life, he comes to realize that the narratives that exist in his community is not sufficient. He thirsts and he hungers for something. He doesn't know what it is, but he can't find it in people. He can't find it in the narratives told to him by his elders. The rituals don't work for him. And what you have is the same story you have in Moses, in Gilgamesh, in Jesus, and the Buddha. That these people are blessed as well as cursed not to find their own people sufficient. Not to be able to find any nourishment. So you know what Muhammad does, like Jesus, like Moses? He walks away from his community and enters a cave. He just sits there. Thomas Edison has not yet been born, so there is no electricity. Do you know how it feels when you look at your parents only to realize they no longer have anything to offer you? To look at your companion only to realize he or she no longer has anything to offer you? To feel completely alone and isolated, to live in the dark and not know how to get out of it. When you go into a cave, what do you find? Nothing. You are given 5 senses to enjoy the world. You're given ears to listen to stories and be inspired. You're given eyes to see people and find those who are attractive and be inspired by their beauty. But you enter a cave. It's dark. Your body has no use anymore. You can't see anything. And after a while, you can only imagine things for so long until the well of imagination runs dry. Go to the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit. He's looking, wanting something. He doesn't know what it is. And he doesn't enter a cave just once or twice for 30, 40 years. Every single day. Every single day for about 25 years. Now, maybe not every single day. To be able to go into a cave, to contemplate, to remain quiet, to enjoy darkness, to be broken, and knowing full well there is nothing you can do about it. It signifies one very, very important thing. Muhammad, like Jesus, like Moses, like Gilgamesh, refused to forget. the meaninglessness of his existence and the meaninglessness of his community. He did his duties, but he didn't forget the fact that no one has anything good to offer him. In Arabic, the word for human beings, there are three of them. The first one is called insan, a creature that just forgets. And when you forget, you lose momentum, you lose inspiration, you lose awe, curiosity, you find yourself distracted. And who the hell knows when you remember again? So for those of you in this class who once in a while hate yourself for having forgotten, it is how the organism functions. How do you continue remembering, making sure you don't forget? You have to go against every aspect of your organism. You have to go against life. So when you go against life, you enter the stage called bashar. That once in a while you see glimpses, insights. You get inspired more and more often. And then as you remember more, you're no longer insan. You don't forget. At least you don't forget often. Then you always remember because now you're a bashar, basharat.